The message came while Jack Miller was reviewing defense reports in his office aboard the orbital station above New Terra. The holographic display in front of him flickered, and Admiral Susan Wright's face appeared, her expression grim. "Commander." "Miller, I don't have much time," she said, her voice steady despite the obvious tension. "The Galactic Council has voted to place sanctions on all human territories. They claim we violated technological development restrictions." Jack felt his stomach tighten. After serving in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years, he had developed an instinct for trouble. This was more than trouble. This was the scenario they had quietly prepared for, but hoped would never come. "Do we know why now?" he asked, already moving to his console to send alert codes to his officers. "Our intelligence suggests the Zirconians pushed for this." They presented fabricated evidence about weapons research. Susan's image wavered as interference cut through the transmission. "I've ordered all fleet vessels to prepare for defensive operations. You need to begin evacuation procedures for New Terra immediately." The transmission ended abruptly. Jack stared at the empty space where the Admiral's face had been, then pressed the station-wide alert button. "This is Commander Miller. All military personnel report to battle stations. Civilian administrators to emergency protocol briefing in 10 minutes. 42 years. That's how long humans had been part of the Galactic Council. 42 years of following their rules, sharing Earth's culture, and learning from the older species. And now this betrayal. Across the galaxy on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Diane Foster sat in stunned silence as the council chamber erupted in shouts and declarations. The Zirconian delegate, First Speaker Volver, had just finished presenting evidence of illegal human weapons development evidence she knew was completely fabricated. "The human delegation will submit to these sanctions immediately," announced High Executor Thezek, the towering blue-skinned representative of the Viridian Collective. "All human military vessels will power down weapons and submit to Council inspection. All colonies will accept Council peacekeeping forces until compliance is verified." Diane stood, her voice cutting through the noise. "The Earth government categorically denies these accusations. We demand time to present our own evidence, and—" "The vote has been taken, Ambassador Foster," Thezek interrupted. "You will inform your government of the Council's decision." Diane felt a hand on her arm. Alan Parker, her intelligence officer, leaned close. "We need to leave now," he whispered. "Security forces are surrounding the embassy." "On what grounds?" she hissed back. "Does it matter? They've been planning this. I've been tracking unusual communications between the senior council members for months." Alan's eyes darted to the exits. "Our communications are already being jammed." As they slipped out a side door of the chamber, Diane saw council security forces entering through the main entrance. This wasn't just about sanctions. This was a coordinated attack. Back on Earth, General Frank Collins stood in the underground command center beneath Geneva, watching as emergency signals flooded in from across human space. "Council warships have entered the Alpha Centauri system," reported a young officer. "They're demanding our outpost surrender." Similar reports from Proxima, Tau Ceti, and the Epsilon Eridani colonies. Called another. Frank studied the tactical display, his mind racing. The human fleet was spread thin across 17 colonies. The Council forces outnumbered them at least 10-1. A direct confrontation would be suicide. "Send the order," he said finally. "Contingency Protocol Omega. All military vessels are to disengage and return to Sol immediately. Colony defense forces are to cover civilian evacuations where possible." His second-in-command looked up sharply. "Sir, that means abandoning the outer colonies." "Temporarily," Frank corrected. "We can't win a war on 17 fronts. We need to consolidate." He turned to another officer. "Activate the Neptune facilities. It's time to deploy the systems we've been developing. For years, human military leaders had quietly prepared for this possibility. The older species in the Council had a pattern. They eventually turned on any younger species that showed too much promise or grew too quickly. Humanity had outpaced all projections for development. The betrayal wasn't a surprise, only its timing. On New Terra, Jack Miller watched from the command deck as the first Council warships appeared at the edge of the system. Their sleek, curved hulls gleamed in the light of the distant sun. "Evacuation status?" he demanded. "First wave of civilian transports is loading now," reported his executive officer. "But we need at least 6 hours to get everyone off-world." Jack nodded. "Then we'll give them 6 hours. Bring the defense platforms online. Position the Liberty and the Dauntless to cover the civilian spaceport." Carol Bennett, New Terra's chief administrator, coordinated the evacuation from the colonies. Operations Center. Panicked civilians flooded the spaceport as news of the Council ships spread. "We need to maintain order," she told her staff. "Priority to children, medical cases, and essential personnel on the first transports." Her assistant looked up from a console. "The Council ships are demanding our surrender. They say they're sending down peacekeeping forces for our protection." Carol's expression hardened. "Tell the colony security forces to prepare for ground resistance. And find me those maintenance tunnel maps. If they hit the spaceport, we'll need alternate evacuation routes." The first shots of the war came moments later. The Council dreadnoughts opened fire on New Terra's orbital defenses without further warning. The human defense platforms returned fire, their energy weapons leaving bright trails across the blackness of space. Aboard the Liberty, Jack watched as one of the orbital platforms exploded under concentrated fire. "They're not here for peacekeeping," he said grimly. "They're here for conquest." He opened a channel to all human ships in the system. "This is Commander Miller. We fight to buy time for the evacuation. Every minute we hold them back means more of our people escape. Today we show the Council what it means to threaten humanity." On Earth, General Frank Collins received the fragmented transmissions from both Diane Foster and Jack Miller. The pieces of the puzzle came together into a clear picture of betrayal. He gazed at the portraits of Earth's colonies, displayed on his office wall, beautiful settlements that had been established through years of sacrifice and hard work. Those colonies faced an overwhelming enemy. But Collins knew something the Council didn't. Humans had always been at their most dangerous when cornered. "Send word to Luna Base," he ordered. "Begin activation of the Phoenix Project. The Council thinks they know what humans are capable of." His eyes narrowed. "It's time to show them how wrong they are." The sky above New Terra burned. 3 massive Council dreadnoughts moved into low orbit, their weapons turning night to day as they fired upon the human defenses. Commander Jack Miller stood on the bridge of the EDF Liberty, watching as his smaller ships darted between the enemy vessels, drawing fire away from the civilian transports rising from the planet's surface. "Status on the evacuation?" Jack asked, his voice steady despite the chaos. His communications officer looked up from her console. "Administrator Bennett reports 6 more transports ready to launch. They need 20 more minutes." A nearby explosion rocked the Liberty. Damage reports flooded in from the lower decks. "We may not have 20 minutes, said Jack's second-in-command. Jack nodded grimly. "Position us between the largest dreadnought and the spaceport. All power to forward shields." Down on the planet's surface, Carol Bennett helped a group of frightened children into the waiting transport. Council landing craft had begun touching down on the outskirts of the colony, and reports of ground troops were coming in from all sectors. "Is everyone from Residential Block C accounted for?" she asked a security officer. "The eastern section is cut off," he replied. "Council forces landed there first." Carol felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Thousands of people lived in that section. She keyed her communicator. This is Administrator Bennett. All civilians in the Eastern Quarter, proceed to Maintenance Tunnel B7. I repeat, proceed to Tunnel B7 for emergency evacuation. A tremendous explosion shook the ground. Carol looked up to see a plume of smoke rising from the main spaceport terminal. They've hit the control tower, someone shouted. Carol made a quick decision. Move everyone to the secondary landing pads. And get those maintenance tunnel maps to my tablet now. In orbit, the Liberty took the full force of the Council flagships. Weapons. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems failed one after another. Shields at 12%, reported the tactical officer. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Jack watched as the last civilian transports cleared the atmosphere. They still needed to reach the jump point beyond the planet's moon, but at least they were off the surface. All hands, prepare to abandon ship, Jack ordered. Set collision. Course with the Council flagship. His crew looked at him in shock. Sir? Questioned his second-in-command. The Liberty is finished, said Jack, but we can still make her count. Get to the escape pods. I'll program the final approach. Back on the planet, Carol led a group of 300 colonists through the maintenance tunnels. The sound of Council weapons fire echoed through the settlement above them. The air in the tunnels was hot and stale, and many of the older colonists struggled to keep pace. The secondary landing pads are just ahead, Carol encouraged them. 2 more transports are waiting. A young security officer ran up from behind. Administrator, Council troops have found the tunnel entrance. They're coming this way. Carl thought quickly. Take 20 volunteers with weapons. Hold them off. As long as you can, then fall back to the transports. The officer nodded grimly, understanding what she was really asking. He would likely not make it to the transports. It's been an honor serving with you, Mom, he said before turning back. In orbit, Jack finished programming the Liberty's final course. The ship's engines were damaged, but there was enough power for one last burn. He looked around the empty bridge one last time, then made his way to the last remaining escape pod. As his tiny craft shot away from the Liberty, Jack watched his ship, his home for the past 3 years, accelerate toward the massive Council flagship. The Council vessel attempted evasive maneuvers, but it was too large, too slow. The Liberty slammed into its command section in a blinding flash of light. Jack's pod shuddered from the shockwave as debris scattered across space. The Council flagship listed to one side, its main weapons silent, fires visible through massive breaches in its hull. On Proxima Centauri 3, Major Paul Winters faced a different kind of challenge. His mining colony had received the evacuation order, but they had only enough transport ships for half the population. We send the children and essential personnel first, he told his staff. The rest of us will arm ourselves and prepare defenses while we wait for the second evacuation wave. His chief engineer looked troubled. The Council will take the Helium-3. Refineries intact. That will fuel their fleet for months. Paul's expression hardened. Not if we destroy them first. That's 40 years of development, protested another staff member. The colony's entire economic future. There won't be a colony if the Council wins this war, Paul replied. Rig the refineries with every explosive we have. If we can't hold, we'll make sure they get nothing but ashes. Back in the Sol system, Admiral Susan Wright oversaw the consolidation of humanity's remaining military assets. Reports from across human space painted a grim picture. 7 colony worlds had fallen within the first week. Millions of humans were now under Council control. Status of the Mars shipyards? She asked her staff. Operating at maximum capacity, replied a junior. Officer, the first wave of new vessels will be ready in 3 months. We may not have 3 months, Susan said quietly. Her intelligence officer approached with a tablet. Admiral, we've analyzed the pattern of council attacks. They're prioritizing. Our resource-rich worlds, especially those with mining operations. Susan nodded slowly. They're not just eliminating a potential rival. They're seizing our resources to fuel their own expansion. She turned to her chief of operations. Implement. Operation Broken Arrow. I want stealth reconnaissance drones deployed throughout Council space. We need to identify their supply lines and fleet movements. A communications officer interrupted urgently. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from a diplomatic courier vessel approaching Jupiter Station. It's Ambassador Foster and Intelligence. Officer Alan Parker. Susan's expression brightened slightly. Put them through immediately. The tired faces of Diane and Alan appeared on the main screen. Admiral, Diane began, we have critical information. The Council betrayal was engineered primarily by the Zirconians. They fear human technological advancement and convinced the other senior members that we posed a future threat. Alan added, we've discovered evidence that this isn't the first time. 3 other species were previously eliminated by similar Council actions, always beginning with fabricated evidence and sanctions before escalating to full military subjugation. Susan took a deep breath, processing this information. So this was always their plan. No matter how we behaved, no matter how well we followed. Their rules. Yes, confirmed Diane. But there's something else. Many of the junior Council species are uncomfortable with the action against us. The Zirconians pushed it through using their influence, but there are potential allies out there. For the first time since the crisis began, Susan allowed herself a small smile. Then we need to show them that humanity is worth allying with, that we can fight back against even the Galactic Council. She turned to her staff. Send word to General Collins. Tell him to accelerate the Phoenix project. The Council thinks they've seen what humans are capable of, but they haven't seen anything yet. 6 months passed since the Galactic Council's attack on humanity. Earth remained protected by its heavily fortified defense grid, but supplies grew scarce under the constant blockade. Council ships patrolled the edges of the solar system, preventing any large-scale movement in or out. On the surface of Earth, life had changed dramatically. Cities operated on rationed power. Farmlands worked around the clock to produce food. And in underground facilities across the planet, factories hummed with activity, building weapons and ships that the Council never imagined humans could create. General Frank Collins stood in the command center beneath Geneva, studying the latest reports from their spy drones. His face had grown thinner, with new lines around his eyes from too little sleep. The Council expected us to surrender within weeks, he said to Admiral Susan Wright, who had just arrived from her headquarters on Mars. They didn't understand who they were dealing with. Susan nodded. Their blockade is strong, but not perfect. Our stealth runners get through about 60% of the time now. And the colonies? Frank asked quietly. Susan's expression darkened. Under occupation, but not beaten. On New Terra, now under Council military administration, Carol Bennett moved through the crowded marketplace. She wore simple clothes and kept her head down, looking like any other human trying to survive under alien rule. But appearances were deceiving. Carol stopped at a fruit vendor's stall, picking up an apple and examining it carefully. This simple action was a signal. The vendor, an older man named Bill, nodded slightly. Fresh shipment day, he said casually. From the northern farms, Carol understood the real message. New weapons had arrived from off-world, smuggled in by sympathetic alien traders who disagreed with the Council's actions. I'll take a dozen, she replied, passing over her ration card. Bill placed the apples in a bag, along with a small data chip hidden at the bottom. Carral would use this to coordinate the next series of strikes against Council communication. Array's 6 months of occupation had taught the humans of New Terra much about their enemies. The Council forces were powerful but rigid. They followed patterns and protocols. This made them predictable. Carroll's resistance network had grown to over 300 active members, with thousands more providing passive support. They couldn't defeat the occupation through direct force, but they could make governing the colony nearly impossible. Far from New Terra, Commander Jack Miller guided his ship, the stealth frigate Defiance, through the darkness between stars. After escaping New Terra in a life pod, Jack had been rescued by a human scout ship. Now he commanded one of humanity's most valuable assets, a vessel specifically designed to slip past Council detection systems. "Status report," Jack said to his crew of 30, all survivors from fallen colonies. "Council patrol ship approaching the mining outpost," reported his sensor officer. "Right on schedule." Jack nodded. "Prepare boarding teams. Remember, we need their command codes and navigation data." The Defiance had conducted 12 successful raids on Council outposts in the past 4 months. Each time, they gathered intelligence and resources before disappearing back into the void. The Council had placed a substantial bounty on Jack's head, calling him a terrorist. Among the human resistance, he was becoming a legend. "Sir," said his communications officer, "we're receiving an encrypted transmission from Earth Command." Jack moved to a private console and entered his authentication. Codes. Admiral Wright's face appeared on the screen. "Commander Miller," she said, "we have new intelligence about a Council research facility in the Rigel sector. They're developing a superweapon designed to penetrate Earth's defenses." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of weapon?" "The details are unclear, but it involves gravitational manipulation on a massive scale," Susan replied. "Your new mission is to infiltrate the facility and gather all available information. If possible, sabotage their research." "Understood, Admiral," Jack said. "We'll set course immediately." On the far side of the moon, Dr. Laura Hayes worked in a laboratory buried deep beneath the lunar surface. She had been Earth's leading expert on alien technology before the war. Now, her work might determine whether humanity survived. Laura carefully examined the components of a captured Council communication device. For months, she had been studying their faster-than-light communication systems, looking for weaknesses. "Dr. Hayes," called one of her assistants, "I think we found something." Laura moved to another workstation where a complex simulation ran on multiple screens. She studied the data, her eyes widening. "Their entire network relies on quantum entanglement," she said slowly. "But there's a fundamental flaw in how they've implemented it. If we broadcast a specifically modulated signal at these frequencies, we could disrupt their communications across entire sectors." Finished her assistant. Laura straightened up, suddenly energized. "Get me a direct line to General Collins. This changes everything. In the diplomatic wing of Earth's unified government." Building, Ambassador Diane Foster met with representatives from the Krell Imperium, a powerful civilization that had remained neutral in the conflict. The meeting was held in absolute secrecy. "The Council's actions against humanity were unjustified," said Diane. "We followed all their regulations, shared our culture and knowledge freely, yet they attacked without true provocation." The Krell delegate, a tall being with iridescent scales and 4 arms, nodded slowly. "We have observed this pattern before. The senior council raises fear competition. They have eliminated promising species in the past. We're fighting for our survival." Diane continued. "But our resources are limited under the blockade." "What do you propose?" asked the Krell. "A trade agreement," Diane replied. "We need raw materials that can't be found in our solar system. In exchange, we offer human innovations in artificial intelligence, technology the Council has always forbidden its members from developing. The Krell representatives exchanged glances. AI research was indeed valuable, especially the unique approach humans had developed. Such an arrangement would need to remain completely hidden from the Council. The lead Krell said finally. Diane nodded. We've established secret supply routes through the Ur cloud. Not even our own people know all the details for security. After hours of negotiation, the Krell agreed to provide critical resources through intermediaries. This alliance, though fragile, gave humanity something it desperately needed: hope. General Frank Collins received Dr. Hayes' breakthrough with cautious optimism. If they could blind the Council's fleet communications, even temporarily, it might create an opportunity for a counter-offensive. How long would the disruption last? He asked Laura over the secure video link. Based on our simulations, between 6 and 8 hours before they could reconfigure their systems, she replied. Frank nodded thoughtfully. That could be enough. He turned to his strategic operations team. Form a special unit dedicated to exploiting this weakness. Codename Task Force Phoenix. He looked up at the map of human space displayed on the wall, showing all the colonies now under Council control. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to imagine those worlds free again. The Council thought they were hunting wolves. He said quietly, "They're about to learn they've cornered dragons instead." 1 year after the Council's betrayal, the largest human battle group ever formed gathered in the shadow of Jupiter. Admiral Susan Wright stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned dreadnought Resilience, watching as the final ships moved into position. A massive view screen showed the assembled fleet, 117 warships, including the sister dreadnoughts Defiance and Vengeance. These vessels were unlike anything humanity had shown the Council before. Built in secret facilities throughout the solar system, they incorporated technologies that humans had developed while pretending to follow Council restrictions. "All ships report ready, Admiral," said her communications officer. Susan took a deep breath. "Send the coded signal to all resistance cells. Operation Righteous Fury begins in 12 hours. Throughout occupied human space, Carl Bennett and other resistance leaders received the encrypted message. On New Terra, Carol gathered her top lieutenants in an abandoned mining tunnel beneath the main settlement. "It's time," she told them, her voice steady but her eyes bright with anticipation. "For 6 months we've been gathering intelligence, mapping patrol routes, and identifying collaborators. Tomorrow we strike." One of her officers, a former colony security chief, looked concerned. "The Council garrison outnumbers us 10 to 1. We can't win a direct fight." Carol nodded. "We don't need to win. We need to create chaos and keep their attention divided. Every Council soldier dealing with us is one who can't fight our fleet." She unfolded a map of the colony. "We'll hit these targets simultaneously: their communications center, power distribution hub, and the governor's compound. Small teams, quick strikes, and disappear back into the population." Similar meetings happened across 6 occupied worlds. Operation Wildfire, as the coordinated resistance action was called, would ensure the Council couldn't focus solely on the coming space battle near the edge of Council space. Commander Jack Miller led his Special Forces team toward the Central Communications Hub on Nexus Prime. The mission was the most dangerous yet attempted by human forces. If successful, it would blind the Council's ability to coordinate their fleet at the critical moment. The Defiance, its hull modified with stealth technology, reverse-engineered from captured Council vessels, slipped past the outer sensor perimeter, undetected. Jack's team of 12 elite soldiers prepared in the ship's armory, checking their equipment one final time. "The virus package is ready," reported Lieutenant Eric Barnes, their technical specialist. Dr. Hayes' disruption program had been loaded onto specialized devices that each team member carried. Redundancy was essential even if most of the team failed to reach their targets, a single successful upload would trigger the communications blackout. Remember, Jack told his team, we'll have a 7-minute window to reach the central hub after we dock. Council security will respond quickly once they detect any unusual activity. His second-in-command, a tough woman named Linda Graham, who had lost her family on Proxima, checked her weapon. They won't know what hit them. The Defiance approached the massive space station that served as the Council's communications nexus. Using faked identification codes stolen in previous raids, they were granted permission to dock at a maintenance bay dot as his team moved through the station's corridors. Jack thought about the magnitude of what humanity was attempting. Their entire future rested on the events of the next few hours dot in the Sol system. Admiral Wright gave her final orders to the fleet commanders. The human forces had been divided into 3 battle groups, each targeting a different Council fleet base. Without central coordination, the Council vessels would be forced to fight independently, negating their numerical advantage. We will jump simultaneously to these coordinates, she explained, highlighting positions on the tactical display. Battle Group Alpha under my command will engage the Council's 3rd Fleet at Arcturus. Battle Group Beta will target their shipyards at Rigel. Battle Group Gamma will strike at their fuel processing center in the Procyon system. The assembled officers listened intently. Many had lost homes and loved ones to the Council's aggression. This was the moment they had prepared for. The Council believes us to be a minor threat contained within our solar system, Susan continued. They do not expect us to strike at their core military assets. The element of surprise will be our greatest weapon. On Nexus Prime, Jack's team reached the central communication hub. 2 guards stood at the entrance, their scaled skin marking them as Zirconians, the very species that had engineered humanity's betrayal. Linda took position with a sniper rifle, while Jack and 2 others approached openly, wearing stolen maintenance uniforms. The guards barely glanced at their faked identification before waving them through. Once inside, they moved quickly to the main control room. Eric connected his device to the primary console and began uploading Dr. Hayes' virus. Warning alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. They've detected the intrusion, Eric said, fingers flying across the controls. Trying to lock us out. Jack moved to the door. How much longer? 3 minutes to complete upload. Jack activated his comm unit. Team 2 and 3, execute your diversions now. We need more time. Explosions echoed from distant parts of the station as the other teams created chaos. Council security forces would be divided in their response, buying precious minutes for the upload to complete. A firefight erupted in the corridor outside the control room. Linda and the others held off the security teams while Eric worked. Jack joined them, his weapon firing with practiced precision. Upload at 80%, Eric called out. One of Jack's team fell, hit by enemy fire. Then another. They were running out of time. 95%, Eric reported. Almost there. The door to the control room began to glow red as Council forces attempted to cut through it. Linda was hit in the shoulder, but continued firing. Upload complete. Eric shouted triumphantly. Across Council space, communication systems suddenly failed. Quantum relays went offline. Emergency backups activated only to be corrupted by the virus. For the first time in centuries, the Council's mighty fleet was blind and mute. In the Geneva Command Center, General Frank Collins received confirmation that the virus had deployed successfully. Send the go order to Admiral Wright, he commanded. Execute Operation Righteous Fury. Back on the Resilience, Susan received the message she had been waiting for. She turned to her bridge crew, her expression resolute. All ships, prepare for jump, she ordered. Today, we bring justice to those who betrayed us. Throughout the human fleet, jump drives powered up. One by one, the massive vessels disappeared from the Sol system. reappearing light years away in carefully selected Council systems. The Battle of Arcturus began as Admiral Wright's flagship led the charge against the Council's Third Fleet, caught completely by surprise and unable to communicate with their command. The Council vessels responded in disarray. The human ships, employing revolutionary point defense systems and energy weapons developed in secret, demonstrated combat effectiveness far beyond Council expectations. After 3 hours of intense fighting, the Council forces broke formation and began to retreat, leaving their base stations defenseless. Similar scenes played out in the Rigel and Procyon systems. The Council, for the first time in its long history, faced an opponent that had thoroughly outmaneuvered them. Humanity had delivered its first devastating counterattack. The stunning success of Operation Righteous Fury sent shockwaves throughout the Galactic Council. For the first time in over 2,000 years, the Council faced a serious military defeat. Emergency alarms sounded in the Grand Council chamber. On Nexus Prime, as representatives from 27 species gathered in Panic. High Executor, Thyzik pounded his fist on the speaking podium. His blue skin had darkened to nearly purple with rage. "The humans must be crushed immediately," he shouted. "Deploy the gravitational super-weapon against their homeworld." Murmurs of concern spread through the chamber. Many Council members, especially those from younger species, had grown uncomfortable with the campaign against humanity. The evidence of human violations had seemed thin from the beginning, and now the brutal efficiency of the human counterattack raised new questions. "The weapon is untested on planetary scales," cautioned the representative from the Vega Confederation. "It could create a catastrophe that would violate our most sacred laws of warfare." Thyzak's eyes narrowed. "Are you questioning the Council's authority?" "We are questioning whether genocide was ever the appropriate response to human advancement," replied the vegan diplomat. While the Council argued, Admiral Susan Wright's fleet secured the Arcturus system. The massive space station that had served as the Council's military headquarters in the sector was now under human control. From the command center, Susan coordinated with the other battle groups. "Rigel shipyard secured," reported the commander of Battle Group Beta. "We've captured 17 Council vessels in various stages of construction. Procyon fuel facilities under our control," added the leader of Battle Group Gamma. "We've redirected their resources to support our advance." Susan nodded with satisfaction. "Begin the second phase. Deploy Liberation forces to New Terra and Proxima Centauri 3. On New Terra, Carol Bennett led her resistance fighters in open rebellion. The careful sabotage operations of the past months had suddenly transformed into a full-scale uprising. Council occupation forces, cut off from communication with their fleet and facing attacks from both orbit and the ground, found themselves in an impossible position. Carol stood on a hillside, watching as human dropships landed in the colony's central plaza. After a year of hiding and fighting from the shadows, she could hardly believe what she was seeing. Among the soldiers emerging from the first vessel, she recognized a familiar face, Commander Jack Miller. Jack had survived the mission to Nexus Prime, escaping with 3 of his team in a stolen Council shuttle. Now he led the Liberation forces returning to New Terra, the colony he had been forced to abandon a year earlier. "Welcome home, Commander," Carol said as Jack approached. He smiled, though his eyes showed the weight of all they had endured. "Good to be back. Your resistance made this possible. Without your intelligence on their positions, this landing would have been much bloodier." Carol looked over the colony, where Council forces were surrendering across multiple sectors. "What happens now?" "Now we take back all our worlds," Jack replied. "And then we make sure this never happens again." On Nexus Prime, Ambassador Diane Foster arrived with Alan Parker and representatives from the Krell Imperium. Their ship entered the space around the Council Center under a flag of truce. The council chamber fell silent as Diane walked in, flanked by her allies. Honored representatives. She began, her voice calm, but carrying throughout the vast hall. 1 year ago, this body voted to condemn humanity based on evidence that was fabricated. Today I come before you not seeking revenge, but justice. High Executor Thizek stood. You have no standing here. Humans are a sanctioned species under military quarantine. A quarantine your forces can no longer enforce, Diane replied evenly. She nodded to Alan, who activated a secure channel. Screens around the chamber lit up, showing the current status of the conflict. Council military bases in flames. Human fleets advancing across multiple sectors. Council forces surrendering on 7 previously occupied human worlds. But we have not come to gloat, Diane continued. We have come with evidence. Alan activated another display, showing internal communications between Zirconian leaders and Thizek. The messages clearly revealed a conspiracy to eliminate humanity regardless of their actions, driven by fear of human potential. The council chamber erupted in outrage. Several representatives demanded immediate verification of the evidence. This is a human deception, Thizek shouted. Alan smiled coldly. Every word is being broadcast on all frequencies to every world in council space, including the worlds of species you have previously subjugated. This was the masterstroke of the human plan. Not just military victory, but exposing the corrupt. Heart of the council leadership to all member species. The Krell representative stepped forward. We have independently verified these communications. The Krell Imperium formally recognizes the injustice done to humanity and supports their demand for reparations. What followed was 6 hours of intense negotiation. The Council's Executive Committee voted to remove the Zirconian representatives and Thizek from their positions. More significantly, humanity was elevated to full Council membership with expanded territorial rights and the freedom to pursue technological development without restriction. On Earth, General Frank Collins and Admiral Susan Wright received the news of the diplomatic breakthrough with cautious optimism. Is it enough? Susan asked. After all we've lost? Frank looked at the images coming in from the liberated colonies. Families reuniting. Communities beginning to rebuild. It's a start, he said, and we've ensured they'll think twice before threatening us again. 2 weeks later, Jack Miller and Carol Bennett stood on the same hillside overlooking New Terra. The colony was bustling with activity as reconstruction efforts continued. Above them, human ships moved freely through the skies alongside vessels from allied species. I've been thinking about what made the difference, Jack said. It wasn't just our weapons or tactics. Carol looked at him questioningly. It was that we refused to abandon our people, he continued. The Council expected us to surrender after they took our colonies. They didn't understand that for humans, there is no acceptable loss when it comes to our own. Carol nodded. And now? Now we rebuild, but stronger, wiser. Jack gestured to where a new building was taking shape in the colony center, an embassy that would host representatives from a dozen species. And we make sure this never happens to any species again. In the following months, Ambassador Diane Foster supervised the establishment of a new council charter with safeguards against the persecution of younger species. The document, signed by representatives of 27 civilizations including the chastened former council leaders, became known as the Terran Accord. On the day of its signing, Diane stood before the assembled delegates and spoke words that would be remembered across the galaxy. The true measure of a civilization is not its age or its technology, but how it treats others. Today we commit to a future where advancement is celebrated, not feared, where diversity of thought and approach is seen as strength, not threat. The stars belong to all of us, and the path forward is one we will walk together. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed humanity had instead forged it into something stronger, not just a survivor, but a leader among the stars. And the justice they had brought was not the revenge many had expected, but something far more powerful. A new beginning for all species.